Welcome, everyone, to the Lion Counseling Podcast. I'm Mark Odland, founder of Lion Counseling and certified EMDR therapist, where our mission is to help men to break free, to heal deep, and to become the lions they were created to be. Well, today's session is about men being skeptical of therapy. And I'll just say it, men out there, a lot of our guys, a lot of our listeners are men. My advice to you is that you should approach therapy with discernment. Not every counselor or therapist is the right fit. Not every worldview lines up with what men need most. And some approaches to therapy emphasize compassion over challenge, systems over personal agency, secular ideas over faith. And I'm not saying therapy is bad. Just being able to talk to another human being who cares can be incredibly healing. Just the nature of how it's set up. It doesn't mean that therapy is bad, but it does mean that you should have the right guide. It does mean that you should have discernment. A good therapist understands men's unique challenges, respects gender differences, honors your values rather than dismissing them. Therapy can be powerful, but it works best when you find someone who actually gets you.
Escape the cage now. Be the lion you was destined to be. Born ready for the war, now my effort is free. The level's been set, time to wrestle the beast. Testing my G, it's getting heavy indeed. The struggle I embrace now, never retreat. I see the test as a blessing indeed.
So first, I'm just going to say it. A lot of therapists are biased against men. Biased against men. If you're hearing me say that and you're a guy, my guess is you're not surprised by that. It's not like I'm hearing this for the first time from Mark Odland. We live in a culture where traditional masculine values, which I know a lot of our listeners hold, are frowned upon as somehow toxic, oppressive, maybe even violent or destructive, right? Take values that a man just trying to provide and protect for his family, to work hard, to try to be devoted to his family and to his faith. Those things are almost like, in this politically charged context, seen as some kind of cue that you are a bad person. When 100 years ago, that would just be the status quo. That would be just a normal thing, in an understandable thing, in a very kind of non-controversial way of seeing the world, right? But we don't live in that world today. We don't live in that world today. And so let's just do a thought experiment, okay? So if you start therapy with a therapist, and we are trained as therapists not to superimpose our worldview on our clients, to not be forceful, to not be evangelical, to be like religious about our view. It's not about us. It's about the client, right? But that's not always the case. Oftentimes, there will be biases. We're all human, right? So as therapists, we have our own biases and we have our own beliefs, and it's our job to regulate those in such a way where it doesn't distract from the therapy process. And unless the client gives the green light to engage therapy in a particular way, our job is to be caring, to be a good listener, to be reflective, to create a plan that helps the client move toward healing, without having our belief system kind of be forceful or heavy-handed, right? All that being said, therapists and counselors are human. And so if you happen to be unlucky enough to be sitting across from a mental health provider who is silently thinking to themselves that by being a guy, then something is inherently wrong with you, or something is broken or defective, or because of that therapist's own beliefs or life experiences, they might have negative associations attached to their own experiences of trauma. It'll be very hard for them to be truly caring and objective. It might be hard for them to be curious about your story. It might be hard for them to be compassionate or empathetic toward where you're coming from. And Starting therapy, starting counseling is already a vulnerable process. It's already an act of faith, an act of courage to step into that space and to pour out your life story to a complete stranger. And so, um, the last thing you need, the last thing you need is to start to get vibes from your therapist that they don't like you, that something's wrong with you, right? That's not a good thing, right? So that's one reason to be discerning about counseling, is you want someone who's not going to be biased toward you simply because you're a man. How do you, I mean, what therapist is going to admit that during a consultation or in an initial phone call? Probably hardly anybody. But and so you just have to use judgment. You have to use your own discernment to try to screen that to the best of your ability. Another reason to be discerning of finding a therapist is that a lot of therapists out there have a bias against something that a lot of us as men are looking for is accountability, practical solutions, and someone who can help support us in taking personal responsibility for our lives. Um, Many of you know that I had a chance to consult with Dr. Jordan Peterson, and one of the reasons why he kind of rose to fame in this very unexpected way was because he tapped into a deep need for young men, not only men, but a lot of young men who were told that they were okay and special just the way they were, without any actual movement in life or competency or accomplishment. And so something deep in their soul yearned for something more. And he tapped into that. He became kind of this father figure for a generation of men who wanted to fight the good fight, in the spiritual sense, in the moral sense. They wanted to have a cause to stand up for. They wanted to make the world a better place. And they needed someone to be honest enough with them to say, it's time, guys. It's time to make your bed. It's time to respect those around you. It's time to respect yourself. It's time to finish that resume, apply for that job, take that risk, right? Um, there's something about being a man where whatever combination of how we're wired versus societal expectation is, um, if a man isn't accomplishing things in life, again, right or wrong, um, it's going to be difficult for them to have any kind of positive self-esteem. It's going to be difficult for them to find a spouse. It's going to be difficult for them to meet their goals in life. And so to have a therapist who's able to have compassion, but also balance that with accountability, encouragement, and just taking seriously the need for personal agency is so important. And sometimes that does contradict what we're trained to believe in grad school about systems, right? Systems theory, which is a grounding theory in marriage and family therapy, and you also see this in politics, is rightly recognizing and understanding that sometimes the best diagnosis isn't just what's inside an individual person, but in the complex patterns and systems that we're embedded in. And then that chain of cause and effect does impact us as people, right? And so we don't want to pretend that we are totally disjointed and separate from the forces around us. We are shaped by the forces around us, but that's just one side of the coin. That's one part of the truth. Some therapists will stay there as their worldview, as their operating system, as their way of conceptualizing what you're going through. And although it can be extremely validating to understand how the systems of the world have um, made you feel trapped or made you feel stuck, that can't be the end point. The end point is acknowledging that and saying, as a person with agency, as a person with choices, if I stay in this stuck place, if I continue to blame other people, if I continue to let go of my own power, you're going to stay stuck, right? And so a recognition of patterns and systems always has to be balanced by personal responsibility, by the belief that I can I can make things happen in this life because I set my mind to it, because of hard work, because of faith, because of my mindset, right? Those things keep people from saying, I mean, literally our website at Lion Counseling is escape the cage now, right? And for many guys, they're just sitting in that cage. They're just waiting. The door has been already broken open, and but they've been conditioned to feel like a prisoner of their own lives. And so, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, good therapy is finding a counselor, finding a therapist who doesn't just tell you why you were caged, but helps you leave the cage, right? And helps you believe that that's even possible. Okay. All right. Another reason, another reason why it's good to be discerning is that there are some therapists who have a pretty strong bias. And again, I'm not trying to paint too broad a brush here, but there are many therapists who are biased against Christianity, right? Are biased against Christianity and some of the more traditional ways of seeing the world that a lot of you, as our listeners, do believe, right? You do have some more traditional values, and in today's politically charged context, um, it can be easy to dehumanize. It can be easy to dehumanize the other, the person who sees things differently than us, the person who maybe has a different way of operating in the world, right? And and so again, if you are working with a therapist or a counselor who, no matter how hard they try, you can see the disgust on their face. You can see them clenching their jaw, or what they say or what they don't say as you're sharing your story. Um, it very well could be that they're not managing what we call in therapy their countertransference. We're people too, right? As therapists, as counselors, we have our own stories, we have our own trauma, we have our own life experience. And when our clients share their stories, we're not only listening, but it also interacts with our own experiences. It lights up memories in our own head. It activates emotions within our bodies. And that's why, as therapists, we're encouraged to get our own therapy because we have to have capacity. We have to have the steadiness to be able to regulate our own emotions while we're simultaneously interacting with our clients as they're sharing their stories. And and if you are not able to do that, if you have such a strong worldview that is biased against a client because of their religion, for example, um, it doesn't go well. It's not a very healing experience. Again, if the therapist can at least stay neutral, at least find a way to have compassion and be curious, well, then that can still be a healing experience, even if it's not kind of overtly Christian counseling. But of course, that's why a lot of men will seek out me and the other providers at Lion Counseling, is because they're looking for a therapist who shares a general the same general worldview, even if it's not identical, right? The same way of just knowing that if they share their faith, if they share their worldview, I'm not going to be gritting my teeth thinking they're crazy or stupid or evil. That there might be differences of opinion, but at a base level, there's a shared understanding, and they don't have to justify why they're not crazy. They don't have to prove that they're not a bad person, that they're not evil. It's just this sense of, okay, I don't have to over-explain myself because I know my therapist kind of gets it. And then some clients will take it a step further. When I ask them what they're looking for, when they say in their intake paperwork that they're looking for Christian counseling, they'll say, well, that means I want to be able to talk about my faith. I want to talk about scripture. I want a therapist who would be okay with saying a prayer at the end of session. If that's, again, if it's something that the client wants, right? At Lion Counseling, we go there. We're comfortable going there. We do so with discernment and discretion and humility. and letting the clients take the lead. We're not being heavy-handed or pushing our stuff onto you. But if that's something that you want to be part of your therapy experience, um, that's what we're here for. So, um, so yeah, there can be a bias. There can be a bias against some of that. Um, we live in what many people call a post-Christian age. Our therapists and our professors have kind of usurped the role of priest and pastor. Um, Secular society has become, in a way, its own religion with its own set of documents, its own set of sacred cows, its own set of dogmas, its own set of hierarchical structures, and own set of sins. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but it kind of ties into this idea that we are apparently wired as humans to worship something and to want to have certainty about things. And if we don't find that grounded in traditional religion, our hearts and our minds will try to find it somewhere else. And that's the irony, right? And we see this with our political discourse is sometimes those that claim to be the most tolerant are really only saying, I'm tolerant of those who agree with me. And if you disagree with me, I, the one who's the arbiter of all moral truth and somehow the enlightened one that is wiser than all those who came before me, I'm in a position now to judge you. And so there's a lot of hypocrisy in our world. And again, as therapists and as counselors, we're not immune from that. Thankfully, our training is to stay neutral, to stay compassionate, to stay encouraging, to join with the client, to understand their story, and to develop a plan for how to get from point A to point B. And a therapist who can regulate their own emotions and implement those things in counseling is going to be a pretty good therapist. And if you can come away from therapy saying, I'm not sure exactly what my therapist believes, but it seems like they care. It seems like they really listened to me. That felt good to talk through that. Okay, then it seems like they did their job. And that might be all many of you need, right? But again, for those of you who are looking for something where you can more overtly um, dialogue back and forth about worldview issues from a more Christian counseling framework, sometimes that's a route that the guys will go as well. Um, and that's why people find us at Lion Counseling. Um, all right, here's another one. Another reason to be discerning is therapy, even though we're highly trained as therapists and as counselors, at least a 2-year master's degree, followed by a 9-month or year-long internship experience and 2 years of supervision. It's a long process, 2 years of supervision before we're licensed. There's a lot of education, a lot of experience involved. Um, but as you well know, someone can be highly educated and not necessarily be extraordinarily skilled. And so, like any profession, there are plumbers who are very experienced and skilled, and some that aren't. There are professional athletes that are extremely skilled, and some that get cut from the team, right? Therapy and counseling is similar in the sense that each therapist, each counselor has their own set of skills, their own capacity, their own personality traits, their own intelligence level, and so there's just something about that. You want to find someone who can listen well, who has the knowledge, but then who also has the skill to be in a process with you, right? And so I tell people if you have, this is a good one for you guys to hear. If you try therapy and it doesn't work, it doesn't seem like a good fit, don't give up on therapy. Just realize that it wasn't a good fit with this particular therapist. But within the profession of therapy, there are good therapists, there are skilled therapists, and you just got to do the work to try to find them, right? You just got to keep trying, trial and error until you find that good fit. And And at Lion Counseling, that's part of the reason why we offer a free consultation, free 30 minutes over Zoom or phone to hear a little bit about your story, to ask all the questions you want to ask, to see if we're compatible, to see if it's going to be a good fit. And that process can make all the difference, um, and can take the anxiety out of it, can take the edge off, the not knowing, and then there's peace of mind. There's a comfort level. Okay, I met with Mark. I met with this other guy, and it seemed like it's going to be a really good fit. I'm ready to start counseling. Um, so that's the ideal scenario. Um, so to kind of pull it all together, there's that question of, how do you as a man find a good therapist or counselor? I think you just got to ask some questions. You've got to ask, when I read this professional's biography or when I talk to them in person, does it seem like they have a grasp of understanding my issues as a man and the ability to address them fairly? That's a question. Um, do I believe that they understand the importance of the expectations that are put on men in this society, right? And that can be very different how society sees the role of men and the role of women in society. Again, right or wrong, there's different challenges that females face that are unique and important, and different challenges that males face that are unique and important to address and acknowledge. Um, Another question to ask is can my therapist respect and understand these gender differences? And can they see that the qualities that I possess are legitimate, that they are not that they could be qualities and not flaws that need to be corrected, right? So I'll say something that could be a little controversial with some with some therapists, but let's take couples counseling. I've done a fair share of couples counseling over the years. And in grad school, it became very clear that, and it wasn't always said out loud, but basically the ethos of the curriculum was in couples counseling, men try to fix things, and women want to connect, and that's how a lot of conversations blow up. That's how a lot of arguments escalate to a place where they're not productive, right? Um, and again, obviously there are exceptions to this, but by and large, studies have shown that women gravitate a little bit more toward seeing an importance on relationship, and men see more importance placed on things, on objects, on puzzles, on things to solve, right? And so that comes up in couples counseling. Uh, uh, the wife is maybe sharing about her day and something hard that happened. The guy, the husband, is instead of connecting with her and empathizing and acknowledging how hard that was for her, he's already brainstorming how to stop her suffering by fixing it, fixing the problem. And there's a collision. There's a collision of wiring that happens in that moment. And And so my job as a couples therapist is, we were told in grad school, essentially, it felt like it was, how do we train these men to be more emotional? How do we train them to raise their emotional intelligence? How do we get them to stop fixing things like this? And I bought into it. Hook, line, and sinker. I kind of drank the Kool-Aid on that for quite a few years. Um, And there's a hint of truth to it, right? As men, myself included, we do have to learn those softer skills. We do have to learn to speak a different language, and we do have to be able to um, put aside our need to fix things in order to connect. But but here's the caveat. Here's the thing that's evolved with my way of seeing it is that thank God that so many of the men I work with are good at fixing things. Thank God that they think about how to solve problems and how to solve puzzles and um, how to ease the suffering through changes of the pattern, changes of the system, right? Um, so I think it's very subtle, but I think it's really important for your therapist to see something like that, for example, and to say, It's not that wanting to fix things is bad. It's not. Thank God that you have that quality because my guess is it makes you good at your job. It helps you as a dad. It's being able to do these kinds of things that literally hold civilization together and keep it from literally breaking apart. But we all have to stretch ourselves, right? And so, but that nuance is missing in a lot of therapy. A lot of men that I've talked to who have had a negative experience with therapy have felt like there's been a covert operation to quote unquote solve the problem by basically making them more like a female. If the husband could only think and act and feel the way that their wife does, then everything would be fine. And that's not helpful. It's not. It's a very invalidating, very condescending way to view the unique things that men have to offer in this world and the way that we see the world. And in the best sense, there can be um, it can work together, right? It can work together. And it's not that a man's way of thinking, again, this is a stereotype, of course, it's a generalization, but statistically, the way that men tend to think, it's not that it's better than the way that women tend to think or feel. It's not that that's better or that's worse. It's that they both are important. And acknowledging those differences and the fact that they both have their place and they both are deserving of respect is a part that I think is missing for a lot of men in therapy, right? So again, how much can you know this by reading a therapist bio online? You know, you'd think. You actually can discern quite a bit by the way that a therapist presents themselves and the words that they use to describe how they operate. Um, but that being said, you might need to have that in-person consultation to know for sure, right? So, um, all this being said, I hope, men, you take away this message that I'm not anti-therapist. I literally am a therapist, and I think we all need it. I really do, especially something like EMDR therapy, where we're digging in to get root causes and healing things at their source. And so we can actually have healing. We can actually have restoration from these old wounds and these old insecurities that we many of us keep running from. Um, there can be lasting healing. Um, so I'm pro therapy. I'm definitely pro counseling, but I just wanted to be honest with you. You need to be discerning. You need to be discerning about who you work with, and give it a session or two. But if the writing's on the wall and it's just there, it's really not jiving for any of the reasons that I've talked about. It's okay to try someone else. It's your experience, it's your life, and you are worthy of having someone who can understand how you see the world and have compassion for it, who really gets it, but doesn't stop at compassion, right? Who balances that compassion with truth, with reason, with accountability, and with a plan to move forward. So I'll leave you with that, guys. If any of you does want to reach out to me, I know there are many good therapists out there, and you have a lot of options to choose from. But if you're interested in connecting with me, you can go to escapethecagenow.com. Happy to do a free consultation to talk more, see if it's a good fit. And as always, if you don't mind hitting that like button and hitting the subscribe button, notifications, it means a lot. It helps us get the word out to more men and keeps building toward our goal. All right. Until next time, talk to you later. Bye.